Hello everyone and welcome to yet another Jujutsu Kaisen character discussion. I know it's been some time, as I had wanted to wait for a good opportunity to make this video, and seeing how things have been going lately, I figure, shit, I might as well do it now. So, it's finally time to talk about the man of culture himself, AoE Todo. Todo is one of my favorite characters, and I'm sure he's among many of your favorite characters. He's just such a fun time whenever he shows up. When he showed up in the Shibuya incident a few months ago, I lost my shit because I didn't expect him to show up, and it had been quite some time since we'd seen Todo in action, so how could I not be so happy to see him again? So, like all of my other character discussions, I am going to be talking about various points about Todo, and I figured the easiest way to do this would just sort of be going over what we learn about Todo in chronological order. So, Todo is introduced relatively early on in the story, when we meet him and Mai from the Kyoto school, them meeting with Nobara and Megumi to cause a little bit of a scene. Mai is there to stir some trouble, talking about Yuji being some half-human, half-curse monstrosity, which very much ticks off Nobara and Megumi, but Todo, being the man he is, doesn't care about any of that nonsense. All he wants to know is what type of woman is Megumi's type, and depending on his answer, he'll beat him half to death and drag out Akotsu or the third year to fight him at the Goodwill event. So, we learn a little bit of stuff here. First off is that Todo is very much like a Blood Knight meathead type character. He really, really likes fighting people. But not only that, he has a very interesting code of honor or combat. I don't think I've ever seen one quite like it before, which is asking, what do you look for in a partner? What kind of woman is your type? It could be a man also, because Todo's very progressive like that. He doesn't care if you're straight, gay, bi, whatever. He just wants to know what you're into, and I feel like you can't help but respect him for that. He's an ally. So, big props to Todo just for that. But I feel like probably the most entertaining part of this is that Todo does not care for these sort of new age types of partners where you're like, oh, I don't care about their appearance, or I want them to be a good person, I want them to have a strong moral character. Nah, fuck that. That's a boring answer. I like tall women with fat asses, which, hey man, I'm a big fan of that as well, so, like, I have to give him some serious props for that. Todo's not into any of that sort of PC shit. It's like, character, I can't fuck character, I can fuck a fat ass. So, that's some pretty entertaining stuff. And we see that Todo is quite a monster. We learn that he is pretty much the trump card of the Kyoto school. Much like how Akotsu is the trump card for the Tokyo school, Todo is the guy that Kyoto calls out whenever they just need to get rid of some curses. We learn from Megumi that during the Night Parade of 100 Demons, which was the events of Volume 0, Todo single-handedly defeated 5 Grade 1 curses and a special grade, and only had to use his curse technique on the special grade, which means just through sheer physical prowess, the man was able to take out 5 Grade 1 cursed spirits. That is nothing to scoff at. Now, at the end of this interaction, we get even more of a in-depth look at Todo's character, when we find out that not only does he have his type of woman, but he's also found his woman in the form of the tall idol star Takata-chan. So we learn within about 2 to 3 chapters that Todo likes fighting people, he likes tall women with big butts, and he has a serious crush, borderline obsession with a cutesy idol star. So, as we can already see here, Todo has multiple different things going on at the same time. He's strong, he's battle hungry, he likes thick women, and if he doesn't catch the train in time to shake hands with a idol star, he's gonna cause a scene. So already he goes far beyond my expectations with having these many different personality quirks. I guess at the very least we could say that Todo is very quirky. He's kind of quirky though, so what can you do about it? So we get our introduction to Todo's character. We understand sort of the general groundwork for what to expect from him when the Goodwill event comes along. And then the Goodwill event comes along, and we get to see him interact with all the other characters for a bit. But we're mostly there to see him interact with Yuji. Yuji is much like Todo in that he's primarily just a physical combatant, despite all the crazy abilities that there are in the Jujutsu world, and Todo has one. Most of the time, he likes to fight with his fists. Yuji doesn't really have any options, but Todo and Yuji are both basically fisticuff fighters. And since they're both freakishly strong, they kind of go at it for a bit. Until Todo asks Yuji that fateful question: what kind of girl is your type? Now, in hindsight, this question actually had some pretty good setup from chapter 3, where Yuji introduces himself to Principal Yaga by saying, "I'm into girls like Jennifer Lawrence." It's been really funny. At the time of recording this, the Goodwill event has not started yet in the anime, but after Todo showed up, seeing people making jokes about Yuji telling Todo that he likes girls like Jennifer Lawrence, I'm like, oh my god, they actually set it up early, holy shit, I never realized that. Yeah, that's pretty hilarious. So, when Yuji says, hey, I like tall girls with big butts, Todo's like, holy shit. He's got he zones out, he starts imagining a memory of a past event that never happened. Now, at the time of this happening, this seems to be just a further showcase of Todo's unique personality, and that it seems like Todo is so fucking insane and delusional that he just imagined an entire years-long friendship with Yuji, which is unbelievably hilarious. It's less funny now with the future context of this apparently being some kind of curse on Yuji that affects other people like Chozo, but it's still pretty hilarious in the context of the scene. And I have to say, this fake flashback does kind of hit hard. I would understand why Todo would care about Yuji so much after seeing this. He is in high school, he wants to tell his crush, who just so happens to be Takada-chan, that he likes her. Yuji gives him some warning, but he goes ahead anyway, and she turns him down. And, how can you not feel for the guy, even though this is from some kind of delusional mental state inside Todo's head that he's imagining right now? You feel bad for a guy when his crush turns him down. So seeing Yuji show up and offering him some ramen, it's really nice. It's a pretty wholesome moment. What can I say? It gives you a really good feeling in your chest, in your heart. Sort of like the Nanami backstory. Nanami's backstory gave me a similar feeling. Maybe a little more profound and inspiring than this one, but it was just sort of like, oh, this is nice. I like this a lot. And Todo cries and realizes that they're best friends. I guess it was just meant to be. So now, with this event happening, we get into Todo's actual role in the story, which is being sort of a direct role model for Yuji. So, this is very interesting. Yuji has some very specialized relationships with various characters. So Gojo is his direct mentor. He's his teacher. Gojo is the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer alive. He is the example of how strong someone can get. That's the peak. And Yuji wants to be able to get as close to that peak as he can. which, I mean, is not going to work without Sukuna cooperating, but, I mean, that's a discussion for another day. That's what Gojo's there for. Gojo is there to sort of set the limits, which, like, there aren't limits, but you get what I mean. He's there to be sort of like, Yuji, these are the basics, and eventually you maybe, possibly will be as strong as me. So we'll see what happens with that. Then we get introduced to Nanami. Nanami is sort of less of a role model for how Jujutsu works, and is more of a role model for how someone should act as a Jujutsu sorcerer. That's pretty much what the Mahito arc is for, is having Yuji realize what it takes to be a Jujutsu sorcerer. Sometimes you are going to have to sacrifice your life, the lives of your comrades. Sometimes you're going to have to kill people, because that's just the way that this business works. So that was Nanami's purpose. Mahito is there sort of as the antithesis of Yuji's ideology. It's literally the exact opposite of what he believes. And we see the growth that is inspired within Yuji as a result of that later on, more recently. Now we have Todo here. Todo is a protege. He is among the students that Gojo says won't be able to be classified as special grade. The classification of special grade will not be able to hold the likes of Okotsu, Yuji, and Todo. So Todo is here to sort of give Yuji the reins on how you should really be fighting if you're going to be someone like me, who is going to change the way the Jujutsu world works when our generation takes over. So he teaches him more about how cursed energy works, how to most effectively use cursed energy, and when the moment comes when they're fighting Hanami, he teaches him how to use Black Flash. Sort of. It's more so just telling Yuji, use Black Flash, but he's there to inspire him to do it. And when Yuji loses control because of all the bad stuff that's happened, you know, Junpei dying, his friends getting hurt, Todo's there to smack some sense into him. Literally, he slaps him in the face, and he's like, listen, man, I understand. You're very upset right now. Your friend Fushiguro's been hurt. Our bonding time as best friends has been interrupted. But this sort of stuff is not good for you right now. So you gotta get your head back in the game so we can beat this guy. And I have to say, Todo really does feel like an inspiring older friend or an older brother. He feels like a real caring mentor figure. So I give him a lot of props for that. And it's because of this that Yuji does indeed figure out how to use Black Flash. And Todo is even inspired by Yuji's proficiency with Black Flash, being able to match Nanami's record of 5 consecutive, I think, oh god, was it 4 or 5? Listen, he chains Black Flashes, which isn't super hard, but you can only go so far as the records have gone. So Todo's like, brother, you always make me feel this way with how amazing you are. And, I mean, what more could you ask for from, like, an older brother figure? Someone who is there for you, helping you, is sort of like a positive role model. He's giving positive reinforcement. And when you succeed, he's genuinely proud of you. Now then, let's talk about Boogie Woogie, because boy, is Boogie Woogie some fucking fun. So, when the battle against Hanami starts getting a little more dire, Todo decides, alright, it's time. I'm gonna use my curse technique. What is my curse technique? Whenever I clap my hands, I can swap places with anything that has cursed energy. Now, that is not some super crazy shit, like, I don't know, being able to create a mass of deletion, like purple, or summoning what's essentially Shikigami Doomsday that can adapt to be immune to any curse technique and has an anti-curse sword that just deletes cursed spirits like Maharaga. But boy, is Boogie Woogie a menace in practice. I don't know if you're aware of this, but just getting thrashed around is really disorienting. So when you just switch places with the only warning being like, that sound, yeah, even if you understand how it works, holy shit, are you going to be getting some motion sickness, and you won't have any idea what's going on. And Hanami is basically trapped between Yuji and Todo, constantly getting teleported around and beaten on. He finally thinks that he's able to predict their movements until the true benefit of Todo's technique comes into play, which is you understanding his technique, or you thinking you understand his technique. You knowing that whenever Todo claps his hands, he could switch places with you, is going to put you on alert for whenever he claps his hands. But just because Todo claps his hands doesn't mean he's going to switch places with you. So boy, can he fucking feint people out. And man, is it glorious. And man, is it glorious again later. So yeah, Boogie Woogie is just a lot of fun. I mean, Todo is a fun character. Like, whenever he shows up, he just sort of lightens up the scene. And Boogie Woogie goes even further with that because Akutami just kind of goes nuts with the choreography. As we know, the choreography in Jujutsu fights tends to be pretty exceptional. So then you put into the mix a hand-to-hand fighter that is able to swap places with people. And then you can just sort of go crazy with the choreography. So that's fun. After the end of the Goodwill event, Hanami's defeated. We just sort of have the resolution. Todo is friends with Yuji. It's not reciprocated very much. Yuji was just kind of going along with it in the heat of the moment. But now that it's over, he's realized it's really, really fucking weird that after, like, one conversation, Todo now considers him a brother. This person that he just met, like, a day ago. So, yeah. And everyone else hates Todo, except for Yuji. Yuji's just kind of cool with him at the moment. It's probably just because Todo is such a fucking weirdo. As we learn after the Goodwill event, when Todo and Meimei are making their suggestions to Gakuganji for giving Yuji, Nobara, Megumi, Maki, and Panda promotions to grade 1 sorcerers, he refers to Yuji as his younger brother, or his brother. And he continues doing this into the Shibuya incident when he comes back with Arata being like, he has a brother? I thought he was an only child. So he just goes around talking about his quote-unquote brother to basically everyone. I like to imagine that he does not go, like, a whole conversation without mentioning his brother. So with his personality already being so weird, I imagine this experience during the Goodwill event just made him completely fucking insufferable to his classmates and teachers. It's just really funny to think about. Now, if there was any time that Yuji needed his big bro Todo to show up and raise his spirits, it's during the Shibuya incident. He got beaten by Chozo. He was forced to watch from a distance as Sukuna killed people and vaporized an entire section of Shibuya, potentially killing thousands of innocent civilians. Then he sees Nanami get killed by Mahito, and then he thinks he sees Nobara get killed by Mahito. Yuji's resolve had reached its limit. He breaks down, he can't handle it anymore, and then Mahito's beating the shit out of him. So then, Best Boy Todo shows up. He claps Mahito away, and he tells Yuji, it's time to wake up. Our battle's just begun. And this is where we get into what I still consider to be the climax of the Shibuya incident. It's like how Ichigo versus Byakuya is still the climax of Soul Society, despite the stuff with Aizen that happens afterward. Likewise, we're having stuff with Imposter Ghetto afterwards. But, like, it's a 12-ish chapter long fight. 12 chapter? Yeah, it's a 12 chapter long fight. So, like, that's the climax of the arc. What better time to have Todo show back up? And Yuji is pretty down in the dirt. He thinks that he's a murderer, that he just deserves to die, and he's given up. So Todo, being the role model of how one should be a Jujutsu sorcerer, he sort of steps into the role that's been left absent by Nanami, and reminds Yuji of what it means to be a Jujutsu sorcerer. They all have the shared mission of exorcising cursed spirits. And no matter how many of them are killed, so long as they're still there continuing on the mission, then their friends are never truly gone. They have not failed. Their purpose as a Jujutsu sorcerer is still being carried on by other people. So he shouldn't give up. He should still keep fighting to carry on that mission. And he does. So Yuji enters the fray once again, and him and his brother have quite the spectacular fight against Mahito. We get further examples of what an absolute prowess in combat Todo is, avoiding all of Mahito's attacks because he understands how he works, I think. Pretty sure. Boogie Woogie is... We get more examples of how effective Boogie Woogie is, and that Mahito is really just completely incapable of touching Todo, to the point where Mahito uses a 0.2 second domain expansion, fully aware of the risk that Sukuna could potentially come out and kill him, because he knows that he can't beat Yuji so long as the top-knot gorilla AoE Todo is still there making things difficult. So he uses Self-Embodiment of Perfection for 0.2 seconds. Todo, being the prodigy that he is, uses Simple Domain, which he learned from Yuki Tsukumo. Yuki is still this very weird rogue element, I guess. We don't understand Yuki at all. We really don't know anything about her. We know that Todo got his whole what type of girl do you like gimmick from her. So we know that much, and we know that he's learned Simple Domain from her. So it's very likely to me that the reason Todo is as good as he is largely factored into by him being mentored by Yuki, who's a special grade. Which I'll get into more of why Todo being sort of mentored by Yuki is so important towards the end of the video. But although he uses Simple Domain, he's not fast enough. Mahito's domain expansion is too fast, and before Todo can activate Simple Domain, Idle Transfiguration has taken effect. It's hit Todo's hand. His left hand is starting to transform. And without a second thought, despite knowing that removing one of his hands will render him incapable of effectively using Boogie Woogie as normal, he does it without a second thought. Which is super fucking badass. I love it when characters see, like, I don't know, they get poisoned, or they get, like, bit by a zombie or something, and they're, like, completely calm and stone-faced. Alright, let's handle this nice and rationally. Cut the arm off. No hesitation. Maybe a moment of hesitation, because you're cutting a limb off. But with Todo, not even a second. Like, he sees what's happening to his hand, and he's like, cool, chops it off. Absolutely fantastic. Now, because of this new opening, Mahito does use Black Flash on Todo. He takes a pretty heavy hit to the gut, but because Todo is the fucking prodigy that he is, I'm sure he got another vision of Takada-chan, like when they were fighting Hanami. That's the thing I forgot to mention a few minutes ago, is Todo really is fucking insane and delusional, even without the memory manipulation stuff, because he just fantasizes Takada-chan showing up to tell him, hey, don't you think you shouldn't use cursed energy to defend yourself when we saw that Hanami's little seed things absorb cursed energy to grow bigger? And he's like, you're right. So I like to imagine that was what happened in this moment. With his just insane reaction speeds. It's just him going into like a lucid state, and his idol crush telling him, hey, Todo, don't you think you should do something else? Doesn't this seem a little weird? And he's like, you're right. I got it. I'll defend my stomach with all of my cursed energy, which he does. Now, it's right after this moment that we get two pretty amazing showcases from Todo. The first one is seeing what's inside his locket. When he showed up in Shibuya with this locket on, we're like, I don't think Todo's had that before. I wonder what's the deal with that. Is it like infused with cursed energy so he can swap places with it if he needs to? Is it like a Is it like a domain countering thing? Is it some kind of cursed object? And when it opens, we find out it's none of those things. It contains pictures of the two most important people in the world to Todo. His best girl, Takata-chan, and his best boy, Yuji. If you didn't have if you had reservations about Todo being best boy, they're all gone now. It's like Todo is very clearly the best boy in the series. And after that, he does something absolutely fucking crazy. It's absurd. He high-fives Mahito, the curse whose ability is to change the shape of the soul of anyone he touches with the palm of his hand. Because Todo is still able to use Boogie Woogie if it's someone else's hand. It doesn't need to be his hands that he's clapping together. It just has to be one of his hands and another hand. So he uses what I, in my headcanon, have called Boogie Woogie High Five to swap places with Yuji so that he can use Black Flash, and basically takes himself out of the fight so that Yuji can take it the rest of the way from here. So, good God. What an amazing move from Todo. How can you not give him credit for that? Now, at the end of this fight, when it seems like it's all up to Yuji now, he's used Divergent Fist on Mahito, which takes him off guard, and then Todo appears. And he tells Mahito that applause is a declaration of the soul. The arm is merely a decoration. And he claps his hands, but since his left hand is missing, he claps his right hand against his stump. Now, if you go back and watch my reaction to this chapter, I was absolutely losing my shit, because I was like, holy fuck, can he swap with just the stump? But guess what? We thought that he could, and so did Mahito. So, he feinted Mahito again, because Mahito, like us, thought it was still possible for him to swap places with his left hand missing, despite his curse technique now being dead. Now, I do still have hope for Todo, because him being able to clap his hand against Mahito's hand leads me to believe that we could just stitch some random asshole's hand onto Todo's left arm, and as long as he can pour cursed energy through it, it'll work. That's what I'm thinking, that's what I'm hoping, but maybe not. We'll have to see. Todo saying his curse technique is dead kind of implies to me that he won't. But Todo's genius moment here, which is totally a Hunter x Hunter reference about, prayer being an action of the heart. This gives Yuji the split-second opening he needs to ensure his victory against Mahito, which, being one of my favorite moments in the whole series, I'm very grateful to him for. And with that, that's all we've seen of Todo so far. The Shibuya incident is not over yet. It's very clearly wrapping up, and the reason I'd waited so long to do this video was because, well, Todo was still actively fighting, but also, he could get whacked like any chapter now. Especially with how strong we've seen Imposter Ghetto is. Todo could die like any chapter now. Fuck me, he could die next week, in the next chapter for all we know. So I wanted to sort of wait until either we were done with his character for a while, or he was gone, so that I could do sort of an in-depth video talking about the entirety of his character. But shit, we're getting like a break every other week. He hasn't shown up in a few chapters, so I'm like, whatever, we'll just do the video now. So to wrap this up, I think Todo is one of the perfect examples of two things. The first one is the idea that Gakuganji presents, that special grades are really not as important as a lot of people think they are. They're super powerful. I mean, we have one who is the strongest sorcerer in the world, bar none. Imposter Ghetto and the Disaster Spirits had to spend several months plotting out a battle plan and a scenario in which they could keep him distracted for 20 minutes just so that Gojo could, in his head, process 1 minute after Prison Realm's activation so that he could be sealed. And even then, Hanami got exorcised. Jogo, really, almost all of the disaster spirits almost died. Like, I feel like if Imposter Ghetto was a few moments late, Gojo probably could have killed Jogo and Chozo and maybe Mahito. So even then, he's absurdly strong. Then you have Akotsu and Ghetto, who are ridiculously strong, and we don't know anything about Yuki. So, I mean, these guys sort of blow everyone else away in terms of sheer power. But the issue is that there's only 2 that are actively on the Jujutsu Sorcerer's side. One was supposedly dead for a while and has been possessed by a brain monster. And the other one is like, where the fuck is Yuki? Yuki slacks off all the time. She's never doing shit to help, or maybe she is and we don't know about it. Whatever. Yuki's never around to help. So we've only got 2 special grades that go on missions and stuff. So the real pillars supporting the Jujutsu Society are grade 1 sorcerers. And we can very clearly see that with how awesome Todo is at exercising curses. So with awesome grade 1 sorcerers like Todo, and of course other ones like Nanami, we get a very clear example of why everything hasn't fallen to shit because we only have like 2 or 3 special grades available at a time. And the second thing is sort of giving us some insight into Yuki, and really just the influence of special grades. I mean, we already know from Gojo how valuable having a special grade sorcerer as a teacher is, but with Yuki, who's sort of like this unknown element, her just finding this random kid that was beating up high schoolers, being like, hey, what kind of girl do you like? And then teaching him a bunch of shit, potentially teaching him Jujutsu overall. He learns Simple Domain, and he learns probably to be as much of a badass as he is. So, at the end of the day, Todo is just fucking awesome. He's an amazing character. He's not, like, super deep. Characters like Nanami and Mahito are super deep. You've got, like, a lot of philosophical stuff to talk about. But with Todo, it's just, Todo is a fun character. Every time he shows up, we have a really good time. And, I mean, what more can you say about him? I think that's most of the reason why Gojo is everyone's favorite character, is because he's just a fun guy. And the same applies for Todo. I guess, considering the current circumstances, Todo is my favorite character who's not dead or in a cube. So congratulations, Todo. Through the line of succession, you've become my favorite character. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do these character discussion videos occasionally. I don't really have any plans for who to do one on next. Maybe Megumi or Nobara, potentially. We'll have to see. But if you enjoyed this one, subscribe, click that notification bell so you don't miss my next one when it comes out. And of course, I assume if you're watching this, you're a fan of Jujutsu Kaisen. You're a fan of the manga, in which case I do chapter reactions and reviews. Every week we get a new chapter, so you should definitely subscribe to my channel so that you can watch those. If you enjoy other series such as Record of Ragnarok, Chainsaw Man, and Kengan Omega, I do videos on those series as well, so if you're interested in those, you should definitely check out my channel. If you enjoy discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to it on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.